As we continue to celebrate Literacy Week, I wanted to take a minute today to do a mini lesson talking to you about imagery. So we're going to do an activity together today, and to do that activity, you're going to need something to write with and something to write on. Or you can also type this activity if you would like to, but you'll just need something to type in or something to write on and with. So go ahead and pause the video and prepare those materials. Now that we're ready, you do not have to take notes here. You're just listening to me. When we get to the activity, you'll need something to write on. So you're not taking notes, you're just listening. So today's activity has to do with imagery. If you had me last year, or if you've taken an English class before where you've read short stories or novels, you might have talked about imagery before. Imagery refers to mental pictures that readers experience when they read. So the things that we visualize when we're reading a text and an author is describing something to us. Imagery often appeals to one or more of the 5 senses. So we've got sight, smell, sound, taste, and touch. Imagery, even though it sounds like image, doesn't necessarily just mean what we can see. It appeals to all of our senses, or one or more of them. So there's 5 types of senses, 5 types of imagery. There's visual imagery, which is sight, what we see. There's auditory imagery, which is what we hear. Kinesthetic imagery is touch, what we feel, and not necessarily what you're touching with your hands, but just anything that you feel physically on your body. Olfactory is what we smell, and gustatory, which is a word I just learned today, gustatory is what you taste. To give you some examples, visual imagery can sound like the golden rays of the setting sun reflected upon the clear waters of the lake. So here the author is focused on what we can see, the rays of the sun reflecting on the lake. Auditory imagery can sound like the trees rustled as the wind whistled gently through the leaves. So here the author is focused on that sound of wind in trees rustling the leaves together. Kinesthetic imagery can sound like, my toes went numb and a shiver ran through my body as I stepped into the cold river. So see how the author here isn't just talking about what the person is touching, it's about feelings that their body has. The toes going numb, the shiver going down their spine as they step into the cold river. Olfactory imagery can sound like, the stench of rotting garbage overpowered my nostrils when I opened the bin. So here we're focused on the smell, what the speaker can smell as they're doing this action. And then finally, gustatory imagery can sound like, her mouth watered and her tongue burned as she bit into the ghost pepper. So if we wanted to take this image and expand on it, if we were writing a whole paragraph about just this particular image, this experience of biting into a ghost pepper, we could add more senses into this, make the imagery even more complex by talking about what the ghost pepper looks like, giving some visual imagery. We could talk about what it smells like, some olfactory imagery. And you might talk about, as you experience a ghost pepper, what your body goes through, the sweats, maybe some, if you're like me and you can't handle any spice, maybe a little bit of shaking hands. That would be your kinesthetic imagery, what your body is feeling. And if we wanted to go all the way and go with auditory, you could talk about what it sounds like to bite into that ghost pepper, that crunch of a pepper. I imagine it sounds like biting into a bell pepper. One last tip is that when we're looking at imagery, one way that authors try to get imagery across is to use simile or metaphor. Simile and metaphor is really helpful when you're trying to describe something to a reader that maybe they haven't experienced before. For example, I have never seen snow, So if someone was trying to describe snow to me, they would have to use similes and metaphors to give me some of those other senses. I obviously know what snow looks like in pictures, but I don't know what it feels like or what it sounds like or what it tastes like or smells like. So people would have to use metaphors or similes to describe it to me so they could relate it to something that I do know and that I am familiar with. So for example, a simile, an example of a simile would be the sun was so hot that going outside felt like walking into an oven. So remember, similes are comparisons using like or as. So we've got that like right here. And this compares the feeling of being outside in the sun to the feeling of potentially walking, what we imagine it would feel like to walk into an oven. Metaphors, on the other hand, don't compare using like or as. They just say that one thing is another. So for example, that day, like most summer days, was an oven. So obviously we know that the day was not actually an oven, but if an author describes the summer day as an oven, then we get a sense of what that day felt like. Obviously it was hot and muggy and brutal. So now that we've gone through what imagery is and some examples of what it can sound like and look like, you are going to take a crack at writing using some imagery. So this is where you're going to need something to write with and on, or a document to type in. So go ahead and get those materials ready, and then pause this video, and once you're ready, you can unpause to participate in the activity. Okay, for this activity, we are going to be taking a virtual hike through the snowy forests of Canada. So hopefully some of you have seen snow. As I said, I have not. So doing this activity, I would have to try and imagine some of these senses, but I'm going to challenge you to imagine some of these senses if you've never experienced snow before. But I'm going to walk you through this, this scenery, and we're going to talk about it. I'm going to give you some prompts, and you're going to have to pause the video as we go so you can write some things down. So just be prepared, make sure you have your writing materials ready, and here we go. So the first thing that I want you to do is just kind of pay attention to what you're seeing on your screen with this video. Pay attention to some of the individual details. Pay attention to some of the more general things. Obviously you see snow, but kind of zoom in and notice some of the small stuff too. Just kind of look, what are you seeing? What are you observing with your eyes? And then go ahead and pause the video and write a sentence or two describing what you see. Only what you see. What are you seeing with your eyes? Go ahead and pause the video now. Now that you're back from writing down what you saw, I want you to think about, as you walk through this trail, what would it sound like? What would it sound like to be stepping on snow in a forest? What would that sound like? And if you're walking through a forest in the winter, would you hear animals? Would there be birds chirping? It looks like it's morning. It looks like it's during the day or the afternoon. Oh, and now there's a Bed Bath & Beyond ad in the middle of our forest. Hold on. Miss D does not have YouTube Premium. Sorry about our Bed Bath & Beyond interruption. So, oh, there's a birdhouse there in the corner if you saw that. So take a minute, pause the video, write down what you would be hearing in this moment, aside from the Bed Bath & Beyond commercial. What would you be hearing if you were walking through this forest? Take a minute, pause the video, and write that down. Now that you're back from writing down what you would hear, what do you think that you would smell? And what do you think that you would taste? I know that we don't have snow in Florida, but we do have the occasional cold day. What do those days smell like? What do they taste like? Don't think so much about like the burning sensation of like breathing in cold air. Think about what it tastes like, what it smells like on a cold day. What would this forest smell like or taste like? Think about those trees. Think about what just snow would taste or smell like. And pause the video and write that down. Now that you're back from writing down what you taste and smell in this forest on this hike, the last thing I want you to think about is, what does it feel like? We've been hiking for a minute. It's cold outside, colder than maybe most of us have ever felt if you've never left Florida, or if you're like me and you've just never seen snow. What do you think this would feel like? What would you feel like? What would your hands feel like? Did you maybe forget your gloves today on this hike? Can you even feel your hands anymore? Now is where you could think about what your nose feels like when you breathe in cold air, and what your throat feels like when you breathe in cold air. So what are the sensations you're feeling in your body on this hike? Go ahead and pause the video and write that down. Now that you're back from writing down what you feel, that is the end of our journey on this hike. Thank you for taking it with me. When you're finished, if you want to go back through and add anything to your writing, you can. If you want to revise anything, go through and kind of tweak anything or edit any spelling, just while you have the time. It's not required. I'm not grading for spelling. I just want to see you use imagery, so don't stress about it. If you want to take a minute to do anything to your writing before you submit it, you can do that now. And when you're done, just go ahead and upload your document or a picture of whatever you wrote to Canvas. And then you are done for the day. Thank you for participating in our Literacy Week Imagery Mini-Lesson. I can't wait to see what you wrote.